Robert, that was beautiful. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the South Fork. My name is Ken Ettlinger. I am your worship associate and a member of this wonderful community. We take this time to acknowledge the indigenous people whose land this was before European colonization and to honor our relationship with our Shinnecock neighbors today in their continued struggles for sovereignty and justice. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you vote, I hope you voted, wherever you are on your life's journey, whatever your name for the sacred, you are very welcome here. We have some announcements for this coming week. Attention singers, please consider joining the holiday choir. Rehearsals will be Sundays starting after service at noon today, and will culminate in a performance of the Christmas Eve candlelight service, which will be at 5:00 p.m. on Christmas Eve. We haven't done the candlelight service until pre-pandemic, right? So this is going to be very special. So if you feel that you have an urge to sing, join us this afternoon. 11's Monday, that's tomorrow, November 14th, 11 o'clock. An agenda-free light mid-morning conversation, refreshments, come as you are, tomorrow at 11. There's also a multi-faith Thanksgiving service on Thursday, November 17th at 7 p.m. at the Old Whalers Church in Sag Harbor. Join with our neighbors for this annual community Thanksgiving service. Everybody is welcome. Help is needed for toddler care during services on Sunday from 10:30 to 11:30. Do we have any toddlers in the audience? Not today. But if you have an interest in doing that, Patience back there, you can talk to her if you'd like to volunteer and get more information. There is a board meeting of the UUCSF, and we held here at the meeting house on Saturday, November 19th. You can contact our board president, Martha Potter, if you want more information. Maureen's Haven, which provides shelter and food for the homeless, partners with local churches, and it is our turn to contribute our time and share our food on November 27th. Mark Potter is coordinating that. You can raise your hand and go over to Mark if you're interested in participating in that. You can find more about how to connect to events this week in your e-bulletin. Please make sure that you sign our guest book if you aren't receiving the bulletin. And you can get announcements to Kelly Glanz, our administrator, by Tuesday of the week. You would like them to appear in the bulletin. If you are visiting or new to the congregation, please sign our guest book on the welcome table at the entrance. You'll also find the order of service there as well. If you're online, use the link in the chat and someone from our Care and Connection team will be in touch with you. We are glad that you took the time out of your schedule to join us this Sunday morning. If you're visiting for the first time or the 50th time and are in agreement with our values, our mission, our UU principles, we hope that you will find a home here. Our minister, Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, is usually in the pulpit on Sundays, but we also have guest presenters that lead the service on occasion, and today is one of these services. Today, our worship leader is Reverend Jennifer Brower. Reverend Brower is no stranger to our congregation. She is Minister Emerita of the UU Congregation of Shelter Rock, having retired from her 20-year ministry this past June. She has launched a private coaching practice, working with the bereaved and others who are engaged in one of life's transitions. A native of Manhattan, she is a graduate of Union Theological Seminary and a mom to a teenage son who is deep in the college application process. I know what that's like. Our musician is master guitarist Robert Secrist. His latest recording of classical guitar music is slated to be released early next year. You may catch him performing at various venues on the East End. There's actually a handout at the welcome table that lists some of his engagements for the next month. Our tech wrangler today is Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, who is moonlighting at the computer in order to give our usual tech people a bit of a break. Yay. Our camera operator, our cinematographer, bringing this service into Zoom audiences, Monica Zasada. Without her expertise and assistance, we couldn't reach out to those who are watching from home today. Directly after the service, we will walk together to join Jim Thurman outside, as long as it's not pouring, I think, at the Memorial Garden for the reading of names of those memorialized there. And afterward, please return for coffee and conversation. So I'm gonna leave it to Jim to give us say the go ahead or not. So it's up in the air right now. Reverend Brower will deliver the opening words as I light the chalice. Welcome, Reverend Brower.
Thank you all for being here this morning, this rainy, blustery morning, and for you who've joined us online. It is such a pleasure to be with you. And honestly, after retirement, such a gift to be able to be with the congregation and serve in this kind of relaxed capacity. I give thanks for the opportunity to continue our relationship, even though I've retired, which is, a little funny. And Kimberly, thank you so much for handling the technology today. You are quite the gifted minister. Gathered here, we are religious seekers who want our spiritual journey to include more than one holy land, more than one vision, more than one scripture. We sing praises in many different styles and in different languages. We marvel at the glorious diversity within the human community, at our uniqueness, but even more at all that we hold in common. With reverence for the gift of life and the gifts of relationship and interdependence, we kindle the flame of this chalice and set aside this time as sacred and special time to be together in person and through our devices. Thank you. We have our story for all ages, and we are all ages in this space. And all ages at home, I hope. Can we see any little people? Are there any little folks with us online? Doesn't matter. There's a child in every one of us. And sometimes they're very demanding little humans. I was thinking about our time together this morning and noticed one day as I was sort of puttering around the house doing one thing or another, that I have over time collected quite an array of acorns, which is kind of weird because I'm no gardener. Okay, I was raised in Manhattan. I'm not good with nature. I'm good with indoor plants. It's, that I can handle, but, I'm not outgrowing trees or anything. But I have all these acorns all around the house, and I brought one with me. I don't know, it's very teeny weeny. Let's see if I can hold it up for you. It's very tiny. Ken will be my witness.
It is a really small acorn.
A teeny weeny start of an acorn, which reminded me of a story that I like very much and I'd like to share with you. A little acorn, larger than mine, a little more grown than mine, hung on the branch of a tree. It had grown there beside many, 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 many other acorns, and along with the trees, beautiful leaves. Little acorn had enjoyed beautiful, bright spring days and long, warm summer days. And little acorn was just as happy as an acorn could be. Acorn had a fabulous view of the area all around. And acorn marveled as the leaves on its tree changed color, turning from green to gold, orange, and then they turned brown. Some of them were whisked away by a rough wind, and little acorn grew uneasy. "What's happening?" little acorn asked the mighty oak. "Oh," said Mighty Oak, "the cold days will come, and the leaves must go, and the acorns will go too." "Oh," said Little Acorn, "I am never leaving this familiar branch." And it held on very tight. But before long, Little Acorn was there by itself on that branch. All the leaves had blown away. They'd made a blanket on the ground beneath. Little Acorn could see other acorn friends there between the leaves in that blanket made by the leaves. Little Acorn was getting kind of lonely now. Tree whispered to Acorn, "You know, this branch wasn't meant to be your home forever. It's just your home for a while. There is much more to you and to the universe and to nature than you have any idea of at this point. There's so much out there that's marvelous and mysterious, and your brown shell is just the cover for more life. Life which can't be set free until the hard shell falls away. And that can't happen until you are buried in the ground, resting, warm, waiting for spring to call you up. So go, Little Acorn, go, let go, fall to the ground. It won't hurt." Little Acorn was nervous, of course, but believed the tree, for the tree had always been trustworthy. So Little Acorn loosened its grip and fell to the ground. That night, a high wind blew like the winds we've experienced in recent days. It blew and covered Acorn deep under a heap of leaves. And the rains came and washed the leaves closer together, and trickling streams of water came down the hillside and swept some dirt and earth over the leaves and the acorn, and Acorn was soon buried in the dirt. Snuggled into the ground, Acorn fell into a deep sleep and slept for a long time. When spring came round after winter, spring called to all the sleeping things underground to waken and come forth. And Little Acorn heard this voice and heard this urging, felt this urging, and began to move. And right away, Acorn knew something was very different. Movement felt different. Acorn's shell was lost to the ground, but Acorn felt just fine. Acorn heard the voices calling it up and grew and grew and grew toward those voices, and it stretched out until it popped out of the ground into this world of air and sunlight and warmth. And Acorn looked down and said, "Ha, ha, ha, I am so much taller than I used to be. I have grown. And I am no longer an acorn. What am I?" Acorn marveled at its growth. "Wow, this is spectacular." And a little bit away, it heard a familiar voice. "Yes," said the mighty oak, "yes, it is spectacular. Now you are the beginning of an oak tree. When you were an acorn, you could not imagine what you would yet become." And the little acorn, now the little oak, was amazed and proud and stretched higher toward the sun, enjoying the beginning of this new life, a new way of being, this magnificent way of being, marveling at what may happen yet in its life. I understood very well why I have a house full of acorns. Though I did have a squirrel in my bathroom this past week. So, maybe I need to work on cutting down the number of acorns I keep in the house. But there is so much marvel, magic, mystery, nature, life inside something so tiny. May we each enjoy the adventure of growing into our fullest and truest selves, growing in ways we cannot possibly imagine in this moment, perhaps. So may it be, and amen. I think we can skip 413.
Yes, we will. Thank you, Reverend Breyer. This is a time where those present can share the joys and concerns of their lives. It's a time that many of us value since it connects us with one another by sharing those human experiences. I will pass around the mic now if you have a joy or concern to share with the congregation. You can also introduce yourself if you're visiting for the first time. Those of you on Zoom can also unmute yourself to share. Please be brief. Later on during the offering, you will be able to light a candle in silence for all those joys and concerns of your heart that remain unspoken. Hello? Okay.
Well, I have a wonderful joy that I'm sitting up here today instead of down with the cute little toddlers because I love it here. The other thing is I'm with my sister who is right there, Linda Sherman. We had a day together yesterday that was marvelous. And we went out for lunch. We talked and talked. We went into our hot tub, which Jerry, our wonderful buildings and grounds guy, finally fixed after, I don't know, more than a year. So that was a celebration. And then when we came home from watching a new play, RBG, over at the theater in Sag Harbor, I looked at my cell phone and got some wonderful other news, which many of you are aware of. Ta-da! The political scene is just, I feel, very wonderful. So that's my joy. I have so many joys. And I also have my niece just showed up and she joined the UU last week. So that's another joy. So joy, joy, joy.
Thank you. I was a little bit concerned about the election day, but democracy prevails. Martha?
Hi, I'm Martha. I have a joy. As you know, many of us, I've been teaching citizenship and people getting their citizenship for many years. And the John Germain Library has an exhibit now on immigration. And so they asked me to speak today. So I'll be speaking at 2:00 there if anybody wants to join me. I'm speaking on the history of immigration and I love doing it. So it's a joy.
That's wonderful.
Hi, my name is Donna, and I've been to several services here, but I've never introduced myself. So hello, everyone. And I wanted to thank everyone for being so welcoming and kind. I really appreciate it. I am here today with my mom, who is Carol, and she is visiting from Florida. That's it.
Welcome, Carol from Florida. Is there anybody in the Zoom world who would like to share? Okay. Today's opening hymn is simple. It's only 4 lines. It's number 389 in your gray hymnal. We will remain seated as we sing the words for number 389, gathered here in the mystery of the hour. We'll sing it together, seated. So we'll sing it one time first, so that you get to know the melody of this chant. And then we'll do something a little bit different, and Ken will help out with that. But Reverend Brower, do you want to lead us?
I'm gonna defer because the Reverend Brower should not be heard singing on microphone. But I will say this, that I encourage all of you to sing loud, proud, as off key as you need it to be, and without worry. And we're gonna let our strong song leaders really lead. But since we're doing a round, I'm coming over here because they're gonna need at least another human being. Balance this out, right? So you sing well.
So I've seen you rocking out in your rock band, so I know you can sing. Well, can you can take one side? Yeah, so that's good. Yes.
And you know, when we sing together, we breathe together. And when we breathe together, we are in sync with one another. And they say our hearts beat together. I don't know that I buy that for $1, but I know that our breathing together is meaningful. So enjoy this time of feeling in solidarity with those who are gathered here in this sacred space. And I hope those who come will also join us.
Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, Spirit, draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the mystery and power, Spirit, draw near. Well, we end it together. That's good.
There are many opportunities to become involved in the work of this spiritual community. We share our talents and we give of our time. We put our values into practice. To the extent that we are able, we give of ourselves in many ways. We also support the work of this congregation financially. Your financial contributions help to support the ongoing work of this congregation, including worship, religious exploration, and pastoral support. And your generosity is reflected in the ways that we are able to show up in our community for justice and community care. There's a basket being passed around for today's offering. There are also baskets in the back to contribute to our Helping Hands Fund, which provides support to local organizations, and our minister's discretionary fund supporting individuals in critical need. People at home can go to our webpage to contribute through PayPal. At this time, we invite you to not only contribute, but also come up to the front, and you're welcome to light a candle here in silence for your joys and your concerns. And meanwhile, as all this is happening, Robert Secrist will present an offertory song as time goes by.
Just lovely. Thank you so much. One winter night about 18 years ago, free child in the process of applying to college. About 18 years ago, I got home very, very late from a board meeting, a Shelter Rock board meeting, and they used to run very, very late in those days. So I was home late, and the street that I live on is normally very peaceful. It's very quiet, dark, sort of small side street in Seacliff, hilly. And I noticed that somehow the energy felt different. Something felt kind of off. It was buzzing in a way when I got home. It was hard for me to sort of get my head around at first. Like, what's creating that feeling? Is that me? Is that the world? What's that about? And I stood in front of the sink, in front of a window, getting a glass of water. And I happened to notice that the energy was coming from a house down the street. So down the street from my house toward the bay is a great big green and white Victorian house down there on the corner with a great big yard. It's kind of unusual in Seacliff for its dimensions. And I noticed that every light in the house was on, every overhead light, every lamp, everything. I'd never seen so much light just like coming out of this house. Oh, okay. It's like something out of a Marvel movie. And I noticed that all of a sudden, just as I was standing there, one after another car came down the street, small street, and parked. And I could hear people slamming doors and moving quickly into the house. And though I was not well acquainted with the neighbor who lived down the street, a few weeks earlier, I had run into him and he'd mentioned that his elderly father was not doing well. And so I knew that I was seeing the evening the father was dying. I knew that that flurry of activity was the many children of this family, now older adults and maybe grandchildren. I didn't know their full stories, and maybe friends, and maybe hospice workers, and a priest, because I know they're very Catholic, deeply steeped in faith, arriving to be with the well elderly father and family. And I stood there at the sink with my glass of water, thinking about what it's like to be in vigil, companioning a loved one who is dying, which I have done and which I certainly did a lot of in my ministry. The first person I ever companioned in their dying was my own mother, who died in March of '99, just as I was finishing seminary. So I know what it feels like to be in vigil. I wanted there to be some way of communicating to that family that there was a witness to their lived experience in that moment. I wanted to be there for there to be some recognition that their lives were being fundamentally changed this night, and that someone saw it, that someone knew, that someone experienced it with them at, standing outside, but there was someone present with them. I wish there was some outward, commonly understood way to tell folks what was going on inside the sheltering walls of that great big green and white house, in a way to evoke, due reverence for the life now ending, and to show some solidarity for those who are moving into the status of being mourners. But there is no such sign. We don't have those that let our neighbors know that there is dying happening in our home. And not all of us have the privilege of dying at home. There are no outward signs to let folks know that we are moving from watching a loved one die to becoming mourners. And the truth is, as I've come to understand it after all these years of ministry, and after my entry into this world through my mother's death, most folks don't actually want to know that you've got dying going on in your home. They don't really want to talk about it. My world is deeply steeped in death and dying, but most people don't want to talk about that very often. So it's made me a little bit of an oddball. Death disturbs us, It mystifies us. It upsets us because all we can be sure of is the conscious life we now experience. It is incredibly difficult for us to get our minds around the cessation of life. We have a hard time acknowledging death privately, and we have very few ways of making public our experiences with death and grief. It's improving, I will say this, since those years when I stood in vigil watching the family down the street, but not by leaps and bounds. Over the years, I've spent a lot of energy thinking about what those markers might be. You know, there was a time when folks hung on their front door a mourning wreath, a wreath of black fabric, maybe some cloth, some flowers woven into that. There was a sign that the family was mourning. There was a time when women and men wore mourning clothes and black armbands or had mourning jewelry made of hair of the departed. Now you can have jewelry made with a thumbprint or a fingerprint of the departed, but that's a little different. But those traditions and ways of demonstrating our loss and grief, of sharing our experiences, of holding on to a piece of someone we have loved, but who has slipped away, all of that has sort of slipped away for us. In today's world and our culture, death and dying and grief have become sort of clandestine acts, things that happen in hospitals, things that nobody wants to see and we don't talk about and we avoid. Ancient rituals to honor life and rituals to help us find our place in the natural order and to aid in our healing, like those of the mourning wreath and the armbands, all of those have been abandoned and not replaced. As we become an increasingly efficient technological society, we've grown farther and farther away from the rituals which honor and mark the most basic life experiences. As if with our abilities to transcend many of the serious matters which troubled earlier people, we now believe that somehow we can transcend the deeper pain of loss and maybe the experience of dying. Years ago, I attended a lecture by a funeral director and a minister, both named Tom. I've now forgotten their last names and the title of the book, which really just says I'm over 50 and can't remember anything these days. But one of the things they talked about a great deal was how the dead are not invited to their own funerals anymore. That we tend to cremate and we don't bring the cremains to the service. So like, you don't even get to go to your own service. We are so cut off from the rituals and the realities. And I see it all the time in funerals that I lead for people. People want so desperately to move towards celebration that they forget the part of really feeling the pain of the loss that they've just experienced. It's so uncomfortable, and we've grown so unaccustomed to sharing that lived reality with each other, that death affects us all. Like those of every generation of human beings that came before us, none of us will slip through this life untouched by death. The experience of my neighbors in the greenhouse, my experiences, your experiences of tending to a loved one and being with them in the process of their dying is not an isolated event. Of course, it's something that all of us will face if we have not faced it already. We face the loss of loved ones through aging and illness and injury. And ultimately, we will face our own dying, which is so hard to get the mind around. But it is our lived reality. We are always moving toward death, some more quickly and obviously than others, even if we don't want to talk about it. When my son Nathaniel was born, I remember him being handed to me and thinking, I am holding the person who's going to bury me. Twisted, I know. Thank you for laughing. It is, I know. I was like, shoot. All that death and dying business, Jennifer, really has gone to your head. It's very strange, but it's true. And it's a weird thing. But it's true. If we're ever going to come to some understanding, some acceptance of the pain of loss and come to terms with the anticipation of our own dying, we really have to find ways of communicating about it, of not shying away from it, of being straight up and honest about it to whatever extent we can, and incrementally over time. I know it's harder for some than others. When my mother was dying, she had ALS, so there was not a lot of talking. But when she was dying, there was conversation about what we would do when the time came. And for a while, she wanted to be part of that conversation. And as it drew closer, she became clear and said in a not very verbal way, I don't want to be part of this conversation anymore. I've said what I needed to say. It's now in your hands and the family's hands. I'm out. So we grow in our capacity for this conversation. But if we're ever going to grow and really expand our hearts and our appreciation for life as we are living it, we have to find ways of honoring the shared experience of all living creatures and talk about it. We need rituals to help us too. We need rituals to honor the process of dying. We need to openly talk about that. We need to reverently mark the event of death. We need to acknowledge the experience of mourning and how profoundly affecting it is. It is distracting and holds our attention and our energy for a long, long time. As I do this work with folks now in coaching around grief and transition, I keep reminding them that it takes a long time to grow a new life that is without the person that you loved. You are having to create a whole new way of being, and that requires time and rituals and waiting and crying and grieving and being honest about that with other human beings. And when the time comes, we need rituals to celebrate the lives of our loved ones who are no longer with us. That funeral service right after a death, that's just the beginning of the rituals. We need so many others to get us through. When my dad died, and I really thought when my mother died in 99, my father was going to be like behind her the next day. I'll be honest about that. But my father lived until February of 2020. So 21 years later. Right, huh? How about that? And he died right before the pandemic shut down. And I needed something. I needed a marker to tell the world that I was bereaved, that my son and I were mourning. So I had the florist make a mourning wreath for me. And the conversation was kind of along the lines of, you want what? To look like what? It's black? Are you sure? But she made a beautiful mourning wreath. And I hung it on the front door. And I put a note on it because I knew that no one coming to the front door would know what on earth it was. And so the little note with big print said, "This is a mourning wreath. We are bereaved." Woohoo. Little weepy now. And I left it up for a month. Then early in the pandemic, there was so much grief. We needed one of those on every house. And when the time comes, as I said, after our mourning, as it's wrapping up, we need rituals to help us celebrate, to remember those we've loved and lost, to tell the world about them, to tell the world what they loved and what they were like and their special ways of being. Today is that day for this congregation. Now, of course, there may be those among us who are bereaved and not ready to lift up in joy or celebration those who have gone before. But I hope that we will have much joyful sharing, that some of you have brought things and placed them on this table for us like the ofrenda, the altar and the Day of the Dead, and shrines in other cultures and communities. You know, the world over, there are all these different traditions that all come down to the same thing, the celebration and the love of those who've gone before. And today we do that here. I've brought with me and placed on your beautiful table there some coffee beans in remembrance of both of my parents, David and Claire, who both loved coffee, who had this little percolator that was like all of this tall, but made tons of coffee. I never quite understood why so many cups of coffee could be poured out of this tiny little percolator. I'm not sure where the percolator went. I think my sister may have made off with it, but little, you know, kind of dull silver percolator, glass top. And so I brought coffee beans in celebration of my parents, both of whom were raised in Tennessee and were excited to move to New York City after being in California for a time, and were happy Manhattanites, and but insisted that their children not sound like New Yorkers. So I carry the influences of my parents in all of my ways of being, and I'm delighted to be able to share them through these coffee beans with you today. We invite those who'd like to come forward and share with us something that you placed on this table, or tell us some good stories about your loved ones who you are remembering at this darkening time of the year. And if you have not brought something with you, don't worry. Get up and talk to us anyway. And if you are joining us from home and you have a story you'd like to share, we would be delighted to hear that. We are all in this together. Today is our day of remembrance. Ken's got the mic.
Stand up, and if you have something on the table that you'd like to share, you can hold it and tell us a little bit about it, or light a candle and relay the story of your
Oh, thank you.
deceased.
Please use the microphone so others can hear you.
Yes.
So I'm Sue, and the timing of this is pretty amazing because my husband died a year ago Thursday, and his birthday is Wednesday. So here is Don, as many of you know. And I just want to say how grateful I am to Don. In his passing, I know I've shared with the congregation many of the incredible things that have happened soon after he died in the next 6 months that have made me a true believer in there is more after death. And I can't thank him enough. It was his plan to communicate, and I believe he did in many miracle kind of ways. So if you want to hear more about that later, I'm happy to talk about it. But for now, I'll.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And if you need to take that mic down from the stand, you go ahead and do that. Just make sure you speak into it, please.
I'm remembering Tom today, and I remember Tom with joy, not with sadness. I try to remember him joyfully. He was indeed a very happy person, and we had a happy 47 years together. Very happy, I have to say. Oh, yes, we had an occasional argument, but who doesn't? You can't live 47 years without an argument once in a while. Anyway, I'm happy to remember him today, and he was the greatest love of my life, and I still miss him. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Monica, and I'm here to show you my brother. Maybe I'll do that.
You can take the microphone with you.
And because I am the oldest of 4 children, I never thought that I would be burying one of my siblings. And come to think of it, Danek always sort of had the tendency, his name was Daniel, but I always called him Danek. He had the tendency of annoying shit out of me, excuse me. And he was saying, I am doing it because I want you to get out of your like very regimented way of living. So when he died here, and his son and his wife said that they would like me to speak at the mass after we cremated him, and I took his ashes to Poland to be buried there. And I remember I was freaking out because I had no idea what to say. And I'm driving to the church and still I have no idea what to say. And for days, there was this annoying sound at the back of the car, and it was his belt that his son put there because his son wanted to wear the belt. And while driving to church, I just heard his voice like, let go, it doesn't have to be perfect, you know, with this clinking thing. So he annoyed me, it was his role, and I love him to death.
Thank you.
My name is Kent. I'm thinking of my little sister who died 2 months ago. Very short notice. And I miss her. And I'm still, processing on how this feels, how this impacts our family. It was great to be together with my siblings and their families, but I didn't bring anything. I forgot to bring her memorial card, but so this is great service to dig into that experience. Thank you.
Oh, I'm Eva. And I didn't bring anything, or I would have been even later. But I wanted to particularly remember my mom, who died in 2007. And she was just a great mom. It wasn't that easy. Most of it, she was a single mom, and she had the 2 of us. But a lot of people knew her as an advocate for the rights of people with disabilities, which is where she ended up. She had MS since she was 14. And they had told her not to have kids, because of the MS, but we got 2 of us. So anyhow, I may post a picture of her on our Facebook page. I have something from Newsday where she was, I don't know, hero of the day or something. But anyhow, but for me, she was my mom.
Hi, I'm Carl. This is actually the first service of this sort where I actually am someone who's experienced a death in my family. My father passed away early in the pandemic, not of COVID-19. He up and died in his home. So we had that kind of evening of lights and cars and flashing lights, and even at 3 a.m. cars were arriving. I really appreciate having a chance to contemplate life and death like this. My dad was kind of a hyper-rational person. Some of you might have met him once or twice. And I'm still trying to kind of reckon how I feel, even 2 years later. Just family is a complicated thing, but I'm glad to say something about him. I do miss him, and I'm caring for my mom, and I'll keep trying to grasp what it means to be no longer with my dad.
Thank you.
My name is Carol. I'd like to remember my best friend. My husband, Jim, died over a year and a half ago. Seems like yesterday, and I miss him terribly.
I'm Mark. I'd like to take this opportunity to remember the people in my life who I never actually did say goodbye to, that were so important to me. Eleanor Brandreth, we shared martinis. Let's see if I can get hold of myself here. Who, for a summer in the Adirondacks, shared martinis and Pall Malls with me, treated me like an adult. Then Harry Wyatt, who taught me to use, or gave me a joiner plane and taught me how to use it, taught me how to use a block plane, how to use hand saws, how to use calipers. And by the time I finished, I was no longer a laborer, I was a carpenter. And then I want to mention Bill Alexander, who had a Jewish name in the early 1930s and changed it to something he thought would make it easier for him to get a job. And by the time he was working with me, he was okay telling me he was Jewish. And you knew he was Jewish from working with him. But he was a writer, and he appreciated my writing and encouraged me. This is advertising writing. And then Leo Yoakum, who just graduated from high school and became a figure skater with roller skates, drafted into the Korean War, was so brilliant that they put him in a box to actually run those cards that those computers were running. So he became a computer specialist in the Marines, and he said, I counted all the dead. He taught me to sales and really got me and gave me confidence. He said, nothing a human being can figure out, you can figure out, Mark. These guys were so important to me in my life, and just really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm John. I'd like to remember a wonderful lady that I remember a lot named Florence Lathrop. She was a friend of my great aunt Eleanor, and lived up in Racine, Wisconsin, which is where I spent the first 13 years of my life. And in later life, I really came to regard her as a great friend, and we would have deep conversations, and she would also recount her life during the Great Depression, and which I was born afterwards, but she was an adult during it. And some of the stories were really quite harrowing, but just in one instance, she taught kindergarten, first grade in Chicago. And there was a time when the Chicago school systems were out of money, and they told the teachers, well, we can't pay you. If you want to keep teaching, we'll pay you when we can, but we can't pay you now. And most of them did keep teaching, but they had to really scrounge. And one time, she and her other friends had to go out in the park and get grass, and they cooked grass in a pot instead of greens, because that was all they could get. But she would tell these stories not in a way of poor little me, look what I went through, but just so matter-of-factly, and she just had such a positive view of everything. And at the same time, she will sometimes ask very deep questions and that I had difficulty answering, of a philosophical nature. So I remember her quite a lot.
Just stay there. Don't walk away.
Diana, you're on to share.
We're trying to get her unmuted. She's a patient soul.
Unmute.
Okay, sorry that took so long to unmute. Well, I'm so delighted to see Reverend Jennifer here. And I really thank you for the service.
We can see her
don't
mouth
talk-
moving,
You
but we
can
cannot
speak
hear her.
now.
You can't hear? Can you hear me now? Okay,
We're not hearing you, Diana.
okay, let's forget it.
Can you act it out?
No, I can't.
No,
Go
I'm
on
not
to
going to
the-
act it out.
Okay, go to the next person.
Okay.
And you go to the next person if you can't hear
Okay,
me.
Diana, you can share by using the text
Yeah.
on Zoom in chat. And Tina, do you let's see if we can hear you, Tina.
Can you hear me?
If we can hear Tina, then maybe we'll come back to Diana at some point.
Can you hear me?
She doesn't have to type it out. All right, can we hear Tina?
Can you hear me?
Tina,
Hang on one
are
second.
you speaking?
I don't think
Are you
people
talking?
on Zoom can hear each other, but people in the live congregation
Now we can,
are not hearing people on Zoom.
now we can hear.
Okay, good. Yes, so thank you, Monica, for talking about your brother, because you brought me to a place of wanting to acknowledge my brother. I was also the oldest of 4, and I wasn't close to him. He grew up to be a Trumper. He used to love to push everyone's buttons by expressing all kind of the ideas he'd inherited from our immigrant parents and grandparents. And he died soon after 2 of his children died. And I just feel so much empathy for the great tragedies that he lived. And also, I miss him. Jerry Curran. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we try Diana again?
Diana, you're on, gone, but not forgotten. Diana. Okay, Ken? Okay, after Ken, we'll hear from Diana.
Yes, can we focus it somewhat? Oops. You do it. Back. Yeah, there, right there. That handsome Viking. My name is Ken. That handsome Viking is my older brother, Doug. My also brother, your brother inspired me. My mom had 4 boys. He was the first, I was the third. We were the ones who were very academic, and I worshiped him. He was 3.5 years older. When he was reading Camus and Sartre as a teenager, I had to read a Camus and Sartre. He went to Stuyvesant High School, the science school. I had to go to Stuyvesant. He was an amazing guy. We had a relationship. I'm very close to my other 2 brothers, especially my younger one. But Doug and I were more like sisters. We spoke all the time. We wrote letters to each other. He was the one I would call when we had things to hash out. He was a brilliant, brilliant Renaissance man. He studied studio art as an undergraduate and biostatistics, and worked in Mount Sinai, and then also was a a consultant in computers, and also painted. Some of you saw his giant painting on the wall of my house, Sleeping with the Fishes. That's my brother Doug. And he was also a poet. He founded Mudfish magazine in the city and had poems that were published by the New Yorker. So he was an incredible human being. He also loved to party, had a famous St. Patrick's Day party. But he also had some other issues. He had a lot of demons. I loved him terribly. His wife and daughter. I miss him. He's probably the person I miss most in my life because we saw each other all the time, and I loved him very much. I think about him all the time.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we hope to hear from Diana. Yes?
Can you hear me now? Yes?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so happy to see you, Reverend Jennifer. I'm really delighted that you're here. And I just wanted to remember a woman. I moved a couple of months ago to the North Fork, and I met a woman who had been fighting Parkinson's disease since she was 37 years old, and she was in a wheelchair. And I only knew her for about 3 months, but she was an amazing influence on my life. She was very beautiful, very positive, very flirtatious, very well dressed, very smart. And she just took me under her wing and she pushed me to do things. I have a tendency to hang back. And she said, you have to sign up for all these activities. And I said, you know, I'll think about it. And she just went ahead and signed me up. And she she lived life to the full, even though she had been fighting Parkinson's for over 30 years and sometimes got very depressed about it, was very honest about that. And she just made a tremendous difference in my life. And I never thought I would mourn someone that I only knew for 3 months, but she showed me how to live every minute. And then she suddenly just went, bam, kablam. And it just reminded me of how fast you can lose life. And she's a tremendous spirit. And I am so thankful that I knew her for the 3 months that I did. She has influenced me in so many ways. So I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mark, I know that you have a plaque. Do you want to explain that?
So this is a plaque that I constructed to honor people who have given bequests to us in their wills. It's mahogany. This is holly and ebony and mother of pearl, and it's geese flying in front of low-hanging clouds in a late afternoon in winter. We've got plenty of room for lots more here.
That's a great sales pitch.
Yeah, right.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all for your sharing of your remembrances. I invite you into a spirit of meditation and prayer, whether you're here in this space or at home. I hope you feel held by each other and by the great family of humankind. As we prepare for meditation, let us be reminded that we never stop missing our beloveds. Our lives are forever changed when they leave us. The very fabric of our life is changed, and as I said earlier, a new life has to be built. We never stop working out the thorny issues that we experienced with our beloveds. We never stop being influenced by them. Spirit of life that animates all living creatures, we give thanks for the precious gift of life, for the breaths we take right now. We give thanks for the lives of those we have remembered here today, those whose names have been spoken aloud, and those who are held in silence. From each of those people, we have received some gift. We have been glad to see their faces to have known their friendship and their love and their companionship, to have enjoyed their laughter and their irritating ways, for the stories they've told us of dark times and their positive attitudes, for the ones who've treated us like adults when we were on our way there with martinis and Pall Malls, for those who signed us up for things we weren't ready to sign up for the siblings we're still working it out with, for the parents we'll always be working it out with, for everything they gave us. We give thanks. They have become part of who we are. May our beloved dead continue to give us strength in our living and in our search for wholeness. And where there's been real hurt in some of those relationships, may we find some liberation for our soul. May we forgive those who made marks we'd rather live without, so that we can be free from that weight. At this hour, we also give thanks for the people who will yet come into our lives and will make their mark on us. It is a marvel that even after we have felt the sting of grief, we can open our hearts again and again and again to let in new people and begin new relationships. For all of this, for the resilient human spirit, for the expansive human spirit, we give thanks. In the name of all that is holy, I say amen. And now we're back to singing. All right, are we nervous? Don't be nervous. Can we stand? Is standing okay for those who are comfortable standing?
That'd be great.
We breathe better when we're standing.
This is hymn number 1010. Is that in the teal? book?
It is in the
I think it
teal
is.
hymnal.
And I think we'll just do one.
There's one, the first verse, what's the?
That may be the only verse.
I think it is there, you know, I saw somewhere recently that somebody added some verses somewhere.
Yeah,
There we
we'll
go.
just do the
Would
first
you like
verse.
that? Yes. We're just
sing
gonna
it starting
sing a
with
little
this.
bit there. Yeah, play it loudly. We'll sing this one together, not as a round. Louder, move again. Ready?
Does that seem right, Carl? Okay, so it's going to be call and response. So if you don't know the words, and there, we will sing the second verse. that
Oh, do you
is
want to do
new.
that?
You want to do that?
Sure.
It's easy if you just listen to what I say and then you sing it yourself.
Okay.
I will-
Okay, come on over.
No injuries today.
Oh, we give thanks for the gracious day, for all gathered here and those far away. For this time we shared with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. Oh, we give thanks for the old and young, for a time of wonder, joy and fun. Oh, we give, for all we give as we grow and live. We give thanks for the old and young. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away. For this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. We made it.
Thank you.
Made it. How about that? Come be with me here.
Oh, okay.
We share with you as our closing words. Use my great big font with me. Come on. It's easier to see.
Whoa.
We have the words of the Reverend Mark Morrison Reed. We are all dying, our lives always moving toward completion.
We need to learn to live with death and to understand that death is not the worst of all events.
We need to fear not death, but life. Empty lives, loveless lives, lives that do not build on the gifts that each of us have been given, lives that are like living deaths, lives which we never take the time to savor and appreciate, lives in which we never pause to breathe deeply.
What we need to fear is not death, but squandering the lives we have been miraculously given.
So let me die laughing, savoring one of life's crazy moments.
Let me die holding the hand of one I love and recalling that I tried to love and was loved in return.
Let me die remembering that life has been good and that I did what I could.
But today, just remind me that I am dying so that I can live, savor, and love with all my heart.
So may it be. Thank you.
Now, remember, after we have the postlude music, we're going to follow Jim out to the memorial garden. And if you would, on your way out, grab one of those white mums and take it with you.
Thank you so much for the music. It's beautiful.
On Zoom, can you nod or something? Maybe? Rhythms? Anyway.
There's still some people coming. We'll give them a few minutes if you don't mind.
Can I hold the camera for you? I'm good. People. Oh no, that's look at the facts.
Okay.
Look down.
We're ready for you.
Okay. Just a couple
Oh,
more.
we're just waiting for a couple more people.
She had her hand up.
Oh.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay.
Well, we have a few coming.
We are gathered here today to remember those people who, like the wind, have moved on. Claire Wolfe, Cheryl Foster, Ken Wisner, Eamon Fearon, Eleanor Swan, Tom Taylor, Ruth Lang, Betty Ann Needle, Sunshine Lemmy, Martin Hall, Larry Andrews, Eleanor McDade, Jerry Murphy, Leonard Harmon, Dorothy Dalsymore, Philip Dalsymore, Charlotte Kerner, Emmanuel Kerner, Carolyn Wilberg, Viola Friedberg, Mark Seidler, Shannon Murphy Comer, Paul Wolfe, Elizabeth Tenner, Stefania, Margaret Logan, Charles Coulter, Ruth Jacobson, Walt Jusky, Reed Strybey, Mildred Granite, Helen Fitzgerald, Anne and George Beard, Imke Lippman, Don Schmitz, and James Mason. Also, let us hold in our hearts all of our who have passed on, and their names have not yet been memorialized in our garden. We also remember them.
Thank you, Jim. Let's go back for conversation and coffee.
Are you laying your phone?
I'm gonna take mine.
You and I
You didn't